nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello, everyone. Just playing the enjoyable Real Deal intro for you all right now. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. But I know you all love the music, so I had to play it, even though it's a little botched up. I love the soundtrack too. Welcome back, Joel, to the Managing Madrid podcast and my segment, The Real Deal. What's like mine and Mehedi's, who I think Mehedi was here the last time you were on. I don't remember. So how's it going, man? How's everything?
Pretty well, actually. Yes, he was here last time I was on the podcast. Glad to be back and glad to dig in pretty much.
Yeah. Well, so you've obviously been away from Twitter for a little bit, and one thing that's become just really like apparent and played out since we last talked is a lot of physical things, just problems and solutions. Like a lot of football is just coming back to athleticism. Pep's team, like all the playmakers, they don't work anymore because they can't run and jump hard enough. Real Madrid, full of injuries, but like we have such fast players, they give us a high floor. And I think our episode on physicality was great. If you haven't heard it, it's on the Real Deal podcast. You can find it somewhere. I'll probably attach it to the show notes in this. Today's episode is a little different look. It's one of the craziest athletes to ever play football, one of the fastest players ever, and therefore one of the most devastating players ever because he knows how to use his movement and speed so effectively to hurt opponents, is Kylian Mbappe. And he's had a bad start to his life at Real Madrid. He's been in a funk. We're not used to seeing great players who are anointed as the chosen one to have funks, but funks are things that happen to people in life. So I thought this would be a great episode to just get into the anatomy of a funk, so to speak. Like, what is a funk? Can anyone go through it? Why do professionals go through it less? And all that. Any early thoughts, Joel, as we get started?
Yeah, I think there's pretty much funks happen in every domain. We pretty much have, yes, in football, when people have poor form, but also you think about writers themselves, people who do music. And I think part of the reason it's crazy to see it sometimes or to even talk about is because these are professionals or athletes who essentially are training every day to do this one thing or perform on this one stage, and it is the one thing where maybe they're better than everyone else in the world, but yet even they too can have their off days or off months or off weeks or off years, seasons in fact. I hope we're able to get into some specifics about what exactly is going on, what are some other factors to consider, and how might Mbappe and his team, the team he has behind him, also be thinking about or working through the problems he's having.
Yeah. So let's start with Mbappe's funk as the first, and then we'll use that as a segue to talk about other funks, archetypes of funks, whatever we want to do. So I guess my background for Mbappe's funk is like he has. You could say this started when he had that nose injury and he was playing the Euros with a mask. Didn't look the best. Going back to last season, his numbers were good, but he played in a worse league. I think the gap between the Spanish league and every league but the Premier League is sometimes underrated. La Liga is hard to score in. The blocks are harder. The Bundesliga doesn't have blocks all the time. France has good deep blocks. I just feel like but immediately off the bat, I can tell La Liga defenders are giving him more problems. Two, this is a guy who played very off ball when Neymar was the center of the team. And with each year since 2020, Neymar has been like either left or he was less of a centerpiece, always hurt. So Mbappe started becoming this on-ball player. And I think it took away from what he's good at, which is like catching guys off guard with his runs, not like beating them when they already are like dialed into what he's doing. So all that happens. And then on top of that, he's also like nervous at Real Madrid. There's a third layer. So like on-ball game is over-optimized. And then like a little physical thing you could say between the World Cup, the Euros, a lot of football. But that's not an excuse. Ronaldo played a lot of football. He changed his game with a knee injury, still scored 40, 50 goals, won a three-peat after a lot of football phase of his career had passed. And so the third thing is his like touch is gone, though. And this wasn't the case at PSG. At PSG, the decision-making was a little off. It was a little confused. It was a little too restricted by Luis Enrique last season because he was asked to do things that don't make sense. He was asked to play like Jack Grealish for Man City. Now, this season, his first touches are off. His decision-making is off. His shooting and finishing also have gone off. And that's that's the funk part of it for me more than anything. So the combination of all those factors means he has, I think, 12 goals in December. And he's like, that's a bad season for him. That's my context background. What have you looked at it at all? What have you seen from afar?
Yeah, I think a lot of the points you made too, and I think first I'll start off with some things we're noticing now is I was just looking at the stats and he's taking like fewer touches than at any point in his career. I think that one game where he was offside 8 or 9 times kind of blew up his stats, but that was one thing everybody noticed. Also receiving less passes than previous seasons and carrying the ball less. I think those are pretty much just indicators that okay, something is wrong. But I think if you look at it too, there does seem to be some coordinated pressure too from the French team, but specifically like that the French media in general, because of the manner in which he finally left, and just that expectation of this was like a long-standing. Everyone knew he was going to leave at some point. I think on his during his interview or the first presentation, he said that he was destined to come to Madrid, and I definitely think a few of those. And maybe not starting as hot as like starting off the entry as hot as the appeal or the prestige behind the move suggested would happen. Part of us bowed down and essentially unraveled into everything we're seeing now. I know a lot of people keep on talking about, oh yeah, he's playing center forward or he's not good down the middle. And I think even Benzema chimed in recently and said, oh yeah, he's not a 9. But even beyond that, there's still those other elements that you still expect as like, yes, maybe he's not playing off the left entirely, but there's still some elements of his game as like just a general footballer that you'd expect to have still like the flashes or constant glimpses you still expect to see, which is also not happening. And I think that was just one interesting part of funks in general, where sometimes you've just become like, yeah, we can say just one facet that is off or 2 facets, but sometimes it really just unravels in everything. Everything just implodes. And
Yeah, for sure. So on the touches, it's interesting because he does have a career low in touches, but his touches in the box is same, if not higher, than any year in PSG. We're a better team than anyone he's played for by far. By like maybe he had one team at PSG that could compare, the 2020 final team. So that's there. And then the second thing is, so in September he scores like 5 games in a row. He gets hurt, misses a game against Atletico. He comes back not fully fit, and that's when that's when his game deteriorated a little, like because he's not fully fit and he's still snatching at chances, not off to the hottest start. But in September you didn't feel that. Like the game before he scored a beautiful goal with a combination play from Bellingham. You probably saw the highlight. It was plastered all over social media. It was a 1-2, and he got hurt that game. And so what happens is the team then looks at the stats, and they're like, hey, in October, he goes offside 8 times, and they assume like he's not comfortable playing at striker. Because what was happening before the injury was he was drifting to the right, vacating the left. Vinicius was playing better with the ball at his feet. And so it made no sense for Mbappe to go hog the left wing zone. And so he comes back and they see him like a little uncomfortable with the injury. And they're like, you know what? Like Vinny plays striker, Mbappe left wing after the Clasico. And so 1 month ago, they're force feeding Mbappe. Vinny plays way better as a striker than Mbappe has at striker. And at this point, Vinicius makes no sense. It's like he's becoming Messi or Neymar before our eyes. Like every game, he adds a new layer that like didn't make sense from a player development standpoint a few years ago. But now you're like, oh, I guess he's almost there. Why wouldn't he add more? And so Vinny keeps getting better. And there was a 2-week period when he's playing on the left and he just isn't as good a dribbler, and it just failed. Then they realized, and the last 2-3 games, they again moved him back to the middle and right. And Vinny's been out. Vinny came back midweek, and he was still playing mostly like on the right wing this last game, like middle and right. So they abandoned the left wing experiment. They abandoned force feeding him. Any thoughts on that? Like, I just think it's funny the way it's played out. Like that they themselves are panicking, and they're like, you know what? Like, put him on the left, give him the ball.
That has definitely been interesting. I've listened to a few of Ancelotti's press conferences where like he's asked, he moved to this place now. Tell us about that. And Ancelotti is generally coy about, oh yeah, these footballers just play. They're going to just play. They never ask me about positions. I think he said that. Oh yeah, they never ask me. They just want to know if they're 11. But clearly on the pitch, there is that modifying to see what works, what doesn't work. And I think the one reason it might be hard for them is because for everyone else, what you're looking at is just, oh, did he score or did he not score? But did he score, did not score might not necessarily be the best reflection if you're trying to still figure out on maybe switching it up every 2 games or every 3 games. Might not really be the best indicator of whether that is working or that will work. I think that is one dynamic, but also I think this is particularly complicated by, people mention, oh yeah, for that spell in PSG where he had him trying to manage the spotlights with Messi and Neymar, they were rotating that and eventually they figured something out. And I think one analogy or one comparison would be, oh yeah, but at that time there, for most parts, he was the best or one of the better performers. So you could just say, yep, whatever, let's just put him in a place where he's working best and it fits everyone else around that. So meanwhile, here is not as, in Madrid, is not as neat because Vini is performing and delivering. So you can't really say, okay, where does Mbappe want to play, or where has he shown his wits best, maybe across the past 10 games or something, and we can work everyone else around that. That's definitely one thing I'm thinking about. But in terms of even the specific positions he plays or the areas of the pitch he occupies, I don't know. I'm eager to hear your thought too, but I think there are ways of getting out the funk, or even if he does get out of the funk eventually, the position would not be as significant, if that makes any sense. Like at that point, the position, all this meddling, we realize, okay, yeah, that's actually not significant anymore. Wherever he's just scoring the goals, and that's all that matters. But I think that's just one. It's just interesting about how we and the fans and the coaches and the analysts will try and modify the position and the style or the areas he's occupying to help him get out of it. But by the time he does get out of it, it becomes one of the more trivial concerns about how he's actually performing or how the team is performing.
Yeah, for sure. I would argue, like where I'd push further is saying, as long as it's not on the ball. I think the problem is I actually don't think he's cut out for an on the ball primary creator role in Europe's top 5 leagues. He is for maybe teams other than Real Madrid, but we're too good. Like we are way too efficient and dangerous. We turn like nothing into dangerous chances when the opposition don't expect it. So for a team like this, like his dribbling won't work. But it does. But what you said is true in that they tried force feeding him, it didn't work. Now he's looking good again, and it's mostly because he's running off ball. And I guess that's where the 8 offsides against Barcelona is that's a weird one, because I feel like you could play that game 50 times and he would probably be like the hero of that game 40 times, even if you repeated the high line, everything. But that one day he's too overeager. He runs in behind too much. And for me, more of those games. The worry for me is if they like decide the only way to get him out of the funk is by giving him the ball. I think once they realize that, I think he's actually one of the least positional, like geometrically. I don't think he's confined to 1/3 of the pitch. I actually think he's just a vertical player. Send him down any line, anywhere. He's a vertical player. So I'm with you on that. And I think that's what's been so silly. With that said, one caveat. The only like positional or tactical thing that could totally transform his output is if we still had Joselu. If we had a Giroud, I think a striker, a profile would increase his prolificness, but that is still not positional as much as a profile thing. But that applies to every attacker on our team because we don't have, other than Jude, nobody can hold it up. If you put one hold up guy there, this whole team, they will just crash whatever ball he brings down again and again and again. And they will take advantage of the space that's vacated by center backs to guard him. We don't have that now. So I'd say that's the one. I'd say like two things. Like if you play him off the ball, he's going to be fine. If you bring in a 9, he'll be better. But I don't think you solve him by saying, hey, like stand here. No, I don't think you can tell him where to stand.
Yeah, agreed for sure. And I think just that point you made about, oh yeah, as long as there's just space and that intent to play it forward and through, he will thrive. And I'm just curious, actually, I'm going to throw this back to you. How have Madrid been progressing the play like generally this season without having like a designated hold-up player? How has the team actually done that this campaign?
We still keep designated players in each game, whether that's some games it's Luka Modric, and then he just runs the whole show. It's worse, but he is the hub when he's on the pitch. Danny Ceballos has actually become a big, like he's come out of nowhere, and he had a nothing season last year, and he just came back, looked really good. We beat Atlanta yesterday or 2 days ago with him. Chouameni has not been doing the job. Camavinga has also been very good. And then Jude has been good as well. And sometimes Arda Güler. But the point is those guys take on the responsibility. And our progression is just worse. We have less long sequences keeping the ball. I will say this. It feels like with Mbappe in town and Vinny, and now and also already having Brahim, Rodrigo, Jude, we have a lot of guys who can dribble, pass, and shoot and receive in space. So a lot of times, like we progress because teams decide they want to try and win the ball from us, and we're just faster than them. I don't know how to say it. Like we just get open, and these guys are faster, and they can't keep up. And not every team sets us off fully. Teams that set us off, we do have problems, but I think that gives you an idea. It's one of Modric or Ceballos or Camavinga and Jude. Usually 2 of them are on the pitch taking on responsibility. But it's felt like the gravity and speed of Vinny and Mbappe have actually created space for us to progress to over time just because they occupy so much energy.
Yeah, and just in that description, I think you raise up something else which might like another point of it could also be one element of maybe the overall struggles this semester could also be just that before the opponents knew they just had to deal with Vinny running in behind, and now they also have Mbappe also running in behind. So whereas some of the teams might be willing to take that risk or gamble in previous seasons or previous campaigns, it does really like this season or in this particular in games where they both play, everyone is just that the opponents just, we're just going to sit in, or whereas would have made some jumps up and tried to get at you in those specific moments that one of the either of these players would have made a run or made some ground. It does feel like that isn't really viable this time. But also I think that point you made about just having a hold up, having a player to play off really just makes all the difference. Having one player to play off makes all the difference. And I've definitely seen or read similar, like there have been situations too similarly with in Rashford's kind of been on a funk forever, but really similar when you have Rashford and everyone says, you just need to have Penny Martial beside him or something, and everything is going to click. Or even if he is struggling, when you just have someone else who can be the to be like almost like to eat off the defenders and just get that first bite or those first 2 contacts and allow the other person to just think about going in behind, then it does make a lot of things easier.
Yeah, and I guess like Giroud, Mbappe does benefit from a guy like that. I mean, Joselu, Giroud. I do believe if we had kept Joselu, nobody would be talking about this problem. Like even if he had he would have had maybe 5-6 more goals, anyways, with Joselu around. And then, but yeah, he is the sort of player who benefits from having a target 9, no question. As far as like progression, I think the main thing for me is he's looked very comfortable not being a ball progressing guy. Like he's looked so comfortable on the right. just the finishing has been off. And he scored 2 goals on the right-hand side this week against Girona and Atlanta now. Very good goals, very key goals, all during this funk when he is supposedly missing penalties. And yet he has been missing penalties. He missed 2 penalties the week before he scored these. So, but I do hear you regarding the funk. Is your camera good?
Yeah, I'm still here. Don't worry. I'll just pop that up in a bit. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess like he is always going to be that profile who needs a 9. So when we do get a 9, I am excited to see how he looks. I guess this could be a good point to segue into like other funks. And in general with finishing funks, I should say like, and I guess in general with all funks, like a funk is ultimately only as damaging as how long it goes. Is it permanent? Is that in this case, how permanent it is usually a function of like, you know, how much are you relying on yourself producing a skill that's like rare. And in Mbappe's case, his speed has been intact. He's moving just as fast as he needs to. The touch is off. The hesitance is there. I think that can be fixed. But the most important thing, and for all great players, is he still creates and gets on the end of a lot of easy chances just by moving. And so his shot diet itself is easy. If he was like some long shot taker who's not able to strike the ball anymore, that's a whole different ballgame. But the gap between being Mbappe and like getting open and then finishing that chance, that's a small gap between like getting open is the hard part in the first place. And a lot of great finishers over the years have had funks. Even not so great finishers who are maybe closer to average. We have Benzema in 2018. Alvaro Morata used to constantly be in a funk. Maybe he still is sometimes. I know he still is. He's a different case because he has spells where he misses again and again. But in general with these, it's a case of hesitance. And I would say like that hesitation is something that comes out of nowhere. Players learn how to finish. They do a really effective job. And what happens is as they figure out how to finish, at some point they have a finish where they start thinking. Time slows down for them. And then instead of repeating what they used to do, which is instinctively striking the ball, they will start thinking and getting in their own head, ruminating. Ruminating is a good term for this. You know, if you've ever suffered from any sort of mental health issue or anxiety, it's no different. It's a form of overthinking. And this is actually something we see with finishers throughout history. Like this overthinking nature. Usually even the best finishers will have a season when they do off. Messi is one of the few who he had one season where his XG and goals were the same. Ronaldo had a few of these spells where point blank chances, it would look like he's hitting them with power too. And he wouldn't be able to get the shot off, or like he would get the shot off, he would mistime it, or it would go straight to the goalkeeper. One of the most famous spells when this happened, I believe, was the 2013-14 season ahead of the Bayern Munich first leg. Ronaldo wasn't in the best form. So we've seen this happen to finishers before. What's rare is the combination of factors where you change team, maybe the team's profiles don't suit you. And then on top of that, while the team's profiles don't suit you, you're also going through some physical issues. So that's the third layer. And then fourth, your touch and everything deserts you too, because the combination of the pressures makes you just really panicky. Like Mbappe's touches look heavy. They look like they have the weight of Real Madrid's pressure on. Like the pressure on his shoulders, you feel them with every touch. It doesn't always feel like him. And you know, you can go back and watch his touches at PSG. He knows how to control the ball. We've seen defenders of ours become way better ball players over the years and get better at basic control. Why would a striker regress so heavily? So that's another factor to consider. I was hoping Joel would be here for this follow-up section. Just checking if he's coming back, but if he's not, we will probably continue. So famous funks and players who got out of them. The first one is Karim Benzema. I'm going to pull up my screen and share it. But even Ronaldo had them, and that's what I'm going to show everyone. So Benzema, and apologies, everyone. The rest of this is going to go a little slower just because I was expecting to have Joel with me while I pulled up these stats. So shooting domestic leagues. Benzema, yeah. So he had 12.8 expected goals, and he finished with let me find it out. He finished with 8.2 fewer goals than expected goals. So I think he finished with 5 non-penalty goals that year or something. Really bad number. And that was one of the worst. The year before, 2016-17, we don't have the data here. Let me go to Understat and pull it up. But, you know, if you don't know about these spells, Jose Perez said it well on the last Members Only show. These once you've seen Benzema and you've seen just mathematically, you've seen players you believe in and realize they had spells where they were bad, you panic a little less because you realize it is actually a little random when it happens. Like as a fan, it's not something you have any control over. And it is something the players have control over, but it's a result of circumstance at points that like you have to reorient and realize what the problem is. In this case, going to Karim Benzema. Give me one moment on Understat. Okay, so in 2014-15, Benzema had 15 goals. Let me pull up the non-penalty XG. Okay, so he had non-penalty goals 15 from 12.4 XG. 2015-16, 24 goals from 21 XG. Let me share my screen. So you can see non-penalty goals column right here, 15, and then 12.4. So outperforms by 3 this year, outperforms by 3 in 2015-16, underperforms by the same margin the following year, underperforms by 9 in 2017-18. One of the worst finishing seasons we've ever seen. Just missed everything. Just nothing could get into the back of the net. Outperforms by 2 the year after, neutral, and then he's a plus finisher 2 years in a row. But weirdly, according to this, he underperformed his XG in his last season. Did not realize that. I also trust Football Reference a little more. I'm not sure if that's true. Now let's go to Kylian Mbappe. Just his whole career. What's up, Joel? Welcome back. Glad you're back. I was just giving the audience some stats on Karim Benzema, how he underperformed during the 2017-18 season, and like by 9 expected goals, his count, and just showing how it fluctuated. And then I just pulled up Mbappe real quick. He has 9 goals. Let me share my screen. Mbappe has 9 goals here from 12.44 expected goals after a career of mostly being above it. So that's where people are panicking. The chance quality is also a little lower than what he had before. I think that's to be expected, though. Slightly harder chance quality shouldn't lead to like some halving of goals. I think he should still produce 80% of what he did in PSG. So, yeah, I was just going over Benzema and telling them, hey, if you didn't watch Benzema in 2018, I would be panicking if I were you too. But I don't know if you know, he had 3 non-penalty goals in La Liga that year.
I did not know, actually.
So worse. Cristiano, who never gives anyone a penalty because he's Cristiano, the great goal scorer who has to break the records. He gave Benzema a penalty during the league. 3 non-penalty goals. I was in Italy, like enjoying a vacation before the start of my 12th grade. And I remember there was a tweet saying Real Madrid are in that like 2011 Pep Barca phase where like you ask what the score is, they're already up. And that was the first game when Benzema missed a bunch of chances and like we dropped points that day right after that tweet. And then like 2 weeks in a row, I was like on vacation, end of my summer. And every time a Real Madrid game came on, it was just watching him hit the post like 5 times in a row. It was sad, man. We actually like destroyed like the first 5 games of the season. We dropped points in 3 games and all just point blank chances. Marcelo feeding him again and again and again. Never seen anything like it. Ronaldo was suspended because he had a red card from taking his shirt off or doing something in a Clasico or touching the ref in a Super Cup. So, yeah, man, things happen. Any funks you want to bring up?
Yeah, I think first, you brought up penalties, and I just remember that Mbappe was also one way his funk has been manifested is also with the penalty situation. And I think this is funny to think about it because at the start of the season, the commentary was really, maybe he's only going to score penalties and like him being handed or gifted penalties. But in the past few weeks, I think he missed 2 in 1 week, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And just thinking about how if you take his sample of penalty converted this semester and compare it to this year and compare it to the previous years, you definitely know something is up. And 20 a week is crazy. If you need any other sign that there's some loss of confidence or just a bit fidgety about his technique, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird because like he's trying, and I feel like he's realizing he needs to like maybe like press a little less, be like on edge less. Um, but yeah, for sure, the penalty situation is a sign that he's allowing the pressure to get to his head. This is not something I think is universally understood, but like I understand it well. If you put a lot of pressure on yourself and you are like nervous about disappointing people, that's just what I feel from him, because I have that imposter syndrome sometimes too. Anytime you want to do something ambitious, you want to please people too. You're a people pleaser, and I definitely get that vibe from him where he's scared to disappoint. He's afraid of disappointing, and you can see it in the penalties. Like they're horrible. They were pathetic penalties. I would say what's weird and paradoxical is that all top performers have this people pleasing trait, and all of them are too hard on themselves universally. It very rarely manifests in a way like this, would you say?
I think I agree that, yeah, like specifically there are two layers here. One is for themselves, they want to do well, but really, especially because top performers, the nature of their role, there are other people being or receiving at the receiving end, they're doing well and maybe carrying a team, doing well and pleasing the fans, doing well and their coach has to think one less, like make one less call about how to use them, how to deploy them. So I think maybe that specific dynamic, yes, affects it a bit, but I do think in the net is like a net positive really for them. Yes, it might manifest weird when they are or do have funks, but fundamentally, this is something that drives them, that pressure or that need to do more or deliver for the team or have the charge of burden placed on them is something that I mean that does yield more than not.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, there's some new research about this, but it's a very specific archetype. There's an anomaly in the genes called MTHFR anomaly. It's a anomaly where the body fails to process a certain B vitamin in a certain way called methylfolate, and it leads to you essentially having higher levels of like stress waste in your body, and it makes it harder to essentially create new dopamine pathways. So you fixate on the same 3 or 4 and you obsess on getting them optimal instead of enjoying a new song and going to a new movie and enjoying it. You watch one movie, you can't stop thinking about how it inspired you for weeks. So it's that personality type that's very common among top performers. And and from a biological perspective, it's not optimal, but over time, I've actually come to believe it is good to question yourself so much. There's a limit though. There's a threshold you can cross where you reach analysis paralysis, and you could argue that's where maybe Mbappe has been at points. Definitely with his shooting, he has analysis paralysis where he's like thinking instead of just doing. And that's the term for it, analysis paralysis. And again, these are things like maybe you see when it manifests in a normal human, it's like nervousness when going to work. They'll go to a doctor. For a top player, like they're always dealing with pressure. So to go and be like, hey, I'm nervous, it's just such a foreign feeling for them.
Yep, agreed. And I think it's fascinating to talk about because even the top performers, especially maybe after retirement or in those periods, they do open up and share details about, oh yeah, we felt terribly about this, or this was not a great space, or in a similar way too, when you think about the hard specific, I think about big moments where they had to overcome things, they will admit that they were absolutely feeling that. But for them, again, this is something that, yes, you can really fix inside yourself before you come on, but the real manifestation when everyone sees, okay, yeah, they have their head cleared, is when, in this case, he starts scoring again or starts performing. And I'm thinking about how linked, if at all, they are linked between solving it on the pitch and showing that on the pitch. Or is this really a you can only solve on the pitch issue?
Yeah. I think the other factor is that like you can maybe solve it with a break as well, because some things just need time. So whether it can be like, because he has to play, it will be something that's solved on the pitch. I do think it's something that could be solved off the pitch. Maybe you solve it off the pitch and it takes a few games to manifest. But I think if you gave him a break, like from the start of the season and just said, hey, come back when you are 100% ready. I think there's an element of it, only in the sense that the wear and tear is so ridiculously high now. Like, you've been burned out before, Joel? Like, you can't go to class. Imagine if you had to keep going to class when you were burned out. Would you be happy today? Would you still be the same Joel?
Absolutely not. Yeah. And I know sometimes that with classes, school, you can essentially give yourself that break, or you can say, okay, yep, I'm going to cut it out and not go for this 2 days, these 3 days. Whereas these professionals essentially have to show up at training every day. No matter how you're feeling, the games will still happen, the international breaks still happen. And that is interesting about the breaks, because sometimes there are some implied or like implicit breaks that happen. So you see someone is on a terrible run of form in their club level, and they have the break for the national team and they go and they perform. But it's not really a break in terms of they're not playing again, but a break in atmosphere, like different space, different teammates, different environments, different expectations. So they are really different ways or different triggers that actually end up pushing that thing over the edge and getting these people back into zone or out of funk. Yeah.
For sure. And I think that's where the motivation came from Didier Deschamps to leave Mbappe out this time. And I forget the exact details. I think he himself didn't want to go the last 2 times. And I think that's very wise, because that extra travel when you're out of form is just a waste. Like, you're in a bad mental state and you're just making it worse by trying to like go somewhere where you don't even care how you perform for France at this point. Like, you just want to show up for Real Madrid. And I'd say the other thing is you can't take breaks because you're competing with not people in the present, but you're competing with ghosts of the past. Like LeBron has said that about Jordan. He, like, since 2016, after he won that title, when LeBron brought a title to the Cleveland Cavaliers, which was the crowning achievement of his career. If you don't follow basketball, LeBron's one of the best basketball players. That was such a crowning achievement. I don't think he had the same hunger after. And a lot of the time, for whether it's for marketing or internally, and probably both, he said, I'm chasing the ghost of Michael Jordan. That's what I used to motivate. And in Mbappe's case, like, the ghost of Messi, of Ronaldo, these guys played 60 games every year. They scored 60 goals every year. They did not have a 6 month, like, any 6 month period they had like this was after they were 30. When they were in their 20s, they weren't like this. And I think the other thing is Mbappe has been playing so much football and has been featured for France from such a young age. And Messi was too, but Cristiano definitely had a slightly slower upbringing. But yeah, I agree with you fully.
And yeah, I was going to take it up and say, yeah, you've given a few examples too, but even in other sports, if we think about specifically on the matter of injuries, and think about Nadal and all the injuries, and Federer and all the injuries, and specifically people having these recurring injuries and having to, okay, this is not working, and maybe change up their game or embody new personalities. And I think that's one crucial element of essential for a lot of these athletes. The persona they embody on the pitch is to some extent directly related to how their technique comes off or how they play off. And when something stops working, you essentially have not just made that persona, you've drilled it into you. And if something in the dynamic or in the environment is suddenly not the same again, that persona, there's so much of becoming a new person that is like unraveling, okay, maybe I don't have to do this, this, and this, and I can just focus on this and this. So a lot of that work actually happens off the pitch, first of all. A lot of that work, and when the athletes speak about it, happens with the coaches too. That mutual understanding of, okay, maybe we should try just these smaller sets of things to focus on, or switching up approach or your technique entirely. And that does get complicated. Now we speak about it so casually and we can just look at the numbers. But when you think about what it takes to perform at that high level in the first place, then think about undoing some of those things to get it going again, it is difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where so much of Mbappe is like, the reason it's easy to break him out is just because, like, chance creation with him is like school ground stuff. Like, just point, hey, beat your man, like, and he does it. And that Clasico, he could have scored it, man. Like, he could have scored it. That's the part people miss. How many players are so good that, like, you can have the defense terrified by just looking at them and they make the run? How many players will even be in that situation 8 times in a game? Very few. And but yeah, and that's where when you said when it comes down to changing things on the pitch, it is complicated, and that's where maybe that's why they tried just giving the ball instead of thinking about it logically. They were like, just like make him feel comfortable, make him feel wanted here first. Because I think there was an element of like they started getting afraid of giving him the ball if he was offside too. Like there are moments in games and I see that hesitance, but the thing is he's so goddamn fast that they may hesitate for 5 minutes, then he's just wide open and they find him anyways. Like he's always there. And I think the other thing is the off ball profile, I think is like very, very underrated in analytics circles. Like just, I don't know why, but like on ball creators are overvalued. And this is going back to when Cristiano was like putting the best Champions League performances ever. And he wasn't doing those as some on ball guy who did it all. He was standing in the box and tormenting Emmanuel Neuer and Boateng and Chiellini and just waiting. He wasn't going and dribbling. He wasn't starting and finishing the move. And I think with Mbappe, he's looked like the off-ball stuff is getting ignored because his touch is off, because he makes the bad decisions. And that's something just I feel like the fan just does way too easily. And it's because maybe like for some players, it's not obvious how easy it is to replicate off-ball success. But I think he's a great example of how it's obvious, like this guy could never play a primary creator role and he'll always thrive. But fans just go and like think like, hey, he's not as good a primary creator as Vinicius, sell him. Like it's so dumb.
Yeah, and that point of trust, so much of if for all off players who do their best work off ball, so much of the magic happens when they have trust from their teammates and like trust that they'll be in the right space, trust them to release the pass or let them go. So in some sense, Mbappe's case is even complicated because that's where he does his best work. But at the same time, by what has happened across the season so far, those few games where he went offside a lot of times, you now have a situation where there is hesitation of, okay, maybe I won't send this through pass when I would have otherwise, or maybe I don't trust him to catch it. And that's pretty much something you can't like coach in or direct or say, hey, pass the ball to this dude at this time or do this at this exact time. It does make any fine tuning from the coach's end less so an individual task of this is how I'm going to set up, but really what do the four players behind him actually think about him going into the game? Like how confident are they feeling? In some way, the confidence kind of translates of if they aren't confident in him, there's no way we can get him to even do his thing. So yeah, just we think about is player specific, but really also is team wide. And I think I was going to now ask that too. How much of this do you also think has to do with the goals and expectation of Real Madrid? Like Real Madrid might have set for, I mean, you as fans, but also the entity might have set for, okay, after we get Mbappe, this is where we're going to do, or this is where we're going to get to, or this is where we're going to win.
I don't think it's fully that. I think what it is how much better Vinicius is, as weird as it sounds. They're not, like Mbappe could fulfill his potential. I don't think he's as good a player as Vinicius anymore. And last season, there were suggestions he wasn't. There were also suggestions, but just give him a better team, he'll look as good a dribbler, playmaker. I'm pretty firm in thinking Vinicius is a better on-ball creator while offering a lot more of the pretty much a very similar off-ball package at this point, which is crazy. I can't believe I'm saying those words. People would have called me an idiot if I said that a few years ago. And but it's reality now. And so that's where I can't say it's expectations as much as like Mbappe is receiving the ball in the same situations that Vinicius does, and he's miscontrolling it. And that won't fly. Like we're used to watching the best player in the world do that. And not only that, the further psychology like of Vinny playing striker 1 month ago and Mbappe playing on the left. The idea that we're catering to a player who like didn't come jump at us. Vinny will always have like a place in Real Madrid fans' hearts that Mbappe can never reach because, you know, he's homegrown in many ways. Like we bet on him before anyone else really knew he'd be good. Forget the fact that like 5 other teams would have spent 30 million on him if he would have said yes. But I don't know how many of those teams would have stuck with him the way we did for a few years. And we also got lucky. Hazard got hurt, but he's in the backdrop of Vinicius. And it's hard to see how he wins a Ballon d'Or if like with him, Vinny and Jude, he doesn't look like he might not be the best. Those two might be better than him straight up as footballers. And that wasn't mathematically apparent because all the hype you're getting before he comes is 50 goals, Cristiano. And then like by the time he gets here, we have our own Cristiano or like split into two between Jude and Vinny. They're like Jude is like the physical box crashing version, Vinny's the left winger version. And so when you have that, it really has been wild because he doesn't defend as well as Jude. Jude works way harder. Jude also defends at such a crazy level while still crashing the box. So there's that other element of like, hey, you won't even like track back like our other guys. You won't create as well as our best attacker. You didn't sign when we really wanted you when Benzema was here. What the hell are you doing here, you know?
Yeah, got it. And Jude, you bringing up Jude is interesting. That's crazy. We haven't already spoken about him because Jude himself, after the crazy running spree last season, start of this year, slow, but in the past week, I think has he scored like 4 consecutive games or 3 or something like that?
Yeah, 5 in a row now. First Real Madrid player other than Benzema and Cristiano to do that in La Liga.
Yeah, that is that is a crazy stat. But yeah,
Right,
I think
scoring too for most of the year.
yeah, I think that's crazy stat. But also just that you're essentially coming to a team where, unlike, I think we can draw some analogy of unlike maybe the previous space where those people were essentially coming to like Ronaldo or the other superstars were coming to save and elevate, like save the team. Mbappe walks into a team that already knows, like, has their people, has their frames. Everyone knows what they're meant to do, and not just that they're not just doing it, but doing it really well. So different vibe. Different vibe. I know earlier we spoke about that. Sometimes needing that. Oh, we need you to perform. Really, they need him to perform, but at the same time, they already have people who can perform and get the job done if he isn't or if he doesn't. So that's just more complicated or very fascinating dynamic really with those two. And I don't think I would now try and compare this with PSG. I don't actually think this was the exact dynamic. This particular dynamic with Vinny and Bellingham is identical to what he had with Neymar and Messi at PSG.
Yeah, totally. There, it's almost like if they over-platformed the other two at the expense of him, it would have hurt the team. So he had to and he's the fastest off the dribble at that point, even if they're better dribblers. He's got the best first touch off the dribble because of his age. And he also has that tie against us where he actually looks like a winger and he actually like plays well, like where you could see, oh, if he was there instead of Vinny, we would still be dangerous. Now I don't even see it. For sure. And so you have the combination of factors. I guess like if you had to make a little guess, you think he has a fine career at Real Madrid. I think he's fine, and I think he does hit 30 to 40 goals every year for like 5 years. I just don't know if this season is the one, but I think they sign a 9 by the summer, I hope. And I think his funk is temporary. I actually do think he has like a 3-year stretch where he's just legit again. But I just don't know when that happens. Like he just got hurt after scoring again. It's only a small like hamstring or thigh injury, 10 days. But, then you have to get back into shape and form. Like that just affects the numbers. So I'm going to say he works fine, but like it's going to need maybe, I don't know if this season ends up perfect. Like he could have a good ending, but I think he'll have blips where he doesn't score as much this season the way it's going.
Yeah, I think maybe Mbappe alone, I pretty much expect him to get back and like across next season to become a reliable scorer. But the truth is, most people aren't, and you say it earlier too, aren't necessarily going to judge him on whether he's scoring, like just scoring. But there had been some expectation that he's not just scoring, but outrightly, if you look at Real Madrid, you say, oh yeah, that's the best player in the team. That is the person getting the job done. And I don't know if, given how those two are performing, that is necessarily something that that's a burden that he would carry for most of the season. And also off that, I don't actually know if that is a space or environment or dynamic that Mbappe has thrived in before, like worked in his career, because he's pretty much been, since he's been young, he's been good, delivering up on top of it. The team has needed him to do things. And I'm thinking about how that might have psyched him and what unlearning or what exactly that reframing would look like of, oh yeah, I'm scoring 30 goals, 35 goals, but they're maybe not the most important 35 goals of the team or not necessarily the most important performance for the team. And if that really matters. But I definitely do think from just a profile skill set, everything about that and this Madrid team suggests he will score goals at some point. Ronaldo had this ketchup analogy that he gave about, oh yeah, nothing comes out at first, then when everything pops out, it just explodes. I definitely think we'll see that, but it does feel like this kind of conversation we're having now will be conversations that will probably pop up a few times across the next however long he's here. Yeah.
Yeah, it is worth wondering, like, yeah, if he scores 35, maybe more than Vinny, are they more important 35 than Vinny? That's hard to see at this moment. But I do think it happens when we fully let go of him on the ball. And I think more games at the Clasico when his mental health is a little better, where he times those runs right. I don't think anyone's complaining in that game if he times his runs right. So there's definitely a factor of I don't think he'll be the best player on the team though. I can agree with that. It's if he does, I will be quite impressed. To go from here to eclipsing this version of Vinny, it's because Vinny's just become like he can receive at any angle and he will always create danger. He may not always make the best choice, but like you have to send 1, 2, 3 at him. And if you don't, he may just dribble past your whole team and shoot. And then you'll feel like an idiot for not doubling him. It's very complicated. But I'd say like Cristiano, like around the knee injury is a good example. He was very efficient even after. He just cut out all the 40-yard dribbles. And from like those, and he completely cut them out. And it was a different Ronaldo because you were used to him being the protagonist in progression and facets. Maybe not like Ozil or Xabi Alonso, but he could still take it up 30, 40 yards. He didn't always make the best choices with it. And I think we got better once he focused solely on making sure he can score tap-ins. And I think if Mbappe does that, there's a lot of on-ball creation on this team. And I think in general, like multiple on-ball creators, you can only have so many until like you need more of an off-ball player or you need them all to start playing in off-ball roles together. And I think he simplifies our whole team's like profiles by being like, but if he can just commit to, and if the team can commit to using him as a release valve all the time, then it's very easy because we have enough on-ball creators to take advantage. Yeah.
No, got it actually, absolutely. And I think that what the comparison you gave to Ronaldo and Ronaldo need to essentially change his game and switch it up. But not just that. The second thing is also in this new role he took up and Ronaldo took up at that time, he still showed out to be, oh yeah, this is my new role, but at the same time, I'm still the person getting the job done in the team. And I'm still the most important. I think some of that is also framing. And some of that framing too, yes, Ronaldo did the like change, but really some of that framing too was bled in through the media. Like that's still important. Like the media we consume of, oh yeah, he might not be dribbling as often, but yeah, look at the goals. He's scoring the goals and look at where his area is and maybe what the coach is saying about him too. So because of that framing, should any change happen, will also be as much like the framing around the actual change would be just as important as the change itself. And what do I mean by this? Just more so, if you go online anywhere, or that could be even just our conversation comparison, the expectation is, oh yeah, do what Vinicius is doing, do it better. So go pick up that ball, dribble, and do all of that. That's what we expect you to do. So breaking that barrier of, okay, this is what people wanted you to do, and maybe this is what you would have been judged of, but forget all that. Just do this and just score goals, and the rest of the team too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is he just had a chance to be the next Ronaldo Messi, and I think both him and Haaland, even if they have very similar numbers, I think universally it's starting to be acknowledged they're not even close, or they're just not there, and that's what I think is unlikely now. The trajectory where maybe if he was 18 and joined us and he could actually be the next Ronaldo, that feels unlikely now. He spent the last 7 years in League One wasting away. Now he has to come learn the system, learn to play against better players week in, week out. So yeah, unlikely to be the next Ronaldo. And the other thing is with all this hype, he's ultimately like a more limited prime Bale. Like he's a fast guy who starts out wide and shoots, but he can't shoot long shots like Bale. He can't head the ball like Bale. best case scenario, his the way he operates in the half spaces should be more efficient than Bale, because that's the only zone he has to live in. Bale could pick it up from 40 yards and shoot. He played playmaker for Wales. He could cross it to Bale. You can't do that to Mbappe. So he does feel like a more limited Bale, which is also like definitely not what we were advertised for years. And Bale's one of the best ever. Don't get me wrong. It's just not what we were advertised. And a more limited Bale though, like that's key though. Like he's not Bale. He's not he's not a like Cristiano type body type like Bale was. Bale was another physical maniac, not just speed. So that's another factor. But yeah, I'm with you. Should return to be a good scorer, but probably won't be the best player on the team. Last thing I wanted to talk about, unless you have anything to add there, is like just a fun little ending note, like what you do to break out of a funk. I've done it like I had different methods when I was in high school before I like got into coaching people and things. So I think it's a fun way to end. I guess I'll give you an example. So the first time I remember trying to break out of a funk was two things. One, when I was really young, like, I remember I got new glasses once and braces, and I felt like, boom, I was like a new person. And then that's in middle school. In high school, I think I had a weekend when I just cleaned my room, got all my homework done, got a haircut. I was just like ready. Like I got a haircut. A haircut's always been big for me because like something about changing the energy, getting rid of the hair that's like maybe has old energies attached to it or whatever. So those were the young ones. What about you?
Some of those are still relatable. For me, one of the ones I do is break. Obviously, I need a break. And when I say break, I really mean a break from the spaces I'm most active in. And really, I go back, step aside, and I pick out one or two things that I want to focus on only. Focus on that, but also I like changing my outfit or style. I don't say outfit, but specifically style. If I was known maybe for wearing this puffer jacket every time, I just do something completely different. And it's, new Joel. That was pre-break Joel. This is post-break Joel. And essentially, what I'm actually doing there is engineering perception or how I come off in the spaces I'm in. Because so much of what I do, so if I walk into the room and someone always expects me to hand them a bottle of water, something about engineering that, okay, yeah, this is a different job. Maybe he won't give me a bottle of water. So I pretty much work on changing the persona, the look, was that haircut, outfits, how I smile, those few things, and spend the break practicing it, then come back into the environment or wherever I need to be in and see how that works. That's pretty much the first one. The second one is I take copious notes. I take a lot of notes about, okay, this is how I worked this before, how I typically do this, and essentially just like specifically listing. So this is this process I do every day. This is exactly how it gets done, and just try to find those pockets of, okay, I'm going to do mini experiments and do one day without this first step, one day without the second step, one day. So I'd run a lot of experiments, and ironically, I'm actually in the process of running experiments, as you alluded to at the start of the call or this podcast, because I quit Twitter for a bit, not necessarily because I had other better things to do, maybe I did, but it was just an experiment. Let's see how much more productive or how my habits change without that. Or if I only consume newsletters every morning as my source, let's see how that changes what I'm able to write about, what I'm able to think about. So the mini experiments part has been helpful, but again, you can only run experiments if you know exactly what is going on, which sometimes you can't tell yourself, and you need someone else to tell you what is going on, a coach, another person around you, a friend. But when you have all those details, then running these mini experiments and re-optimizing is really fun.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, on that note, I think one of the big ones, and even players struggle with this, and LeBron is famous for incorporating this into his routine, is social media, just getting rid of it. LeBron James has that famous 0 Dark 30 mode where he turns off, like he's off social media all through the playoffs, and all he's doing is just preparing. It's been famous for years. Obviously, his playoff LeBron doesn't hit the same now anymore as it did a few years ago, but a few years ago, there was such a distinct difference. You'd just be like, holy crap, this guy is a different level right now. And with Mbappe, I wonder almost if he's reading too much of like the criticism. You definitely don't want to be reading criticism. Another basic one that sometimes people overlook because they're not honest with themselves is just substances, drugs, alcohol, just being sober and, eating and going to bed on time. But these players obviously have a lot of those things handled. The thing is, though, sometimes they don't. What people miss is that, like, Mbappe doesn't have a personal trainer. He does not, apparently, because he just always trusted the PSG guys. I think that's fine. But I don't think he looks as good physically as he did 2 years ago. He's just as fast top speed, but you could measure the top speed is the same, but that doesn't tell you anything. Like, if you watch him, you can tell. He looks just a little chubbier, like a little slower, just a little heavier. And having that extra person is important. Doing the off-pitch work is important. There's so many factors. Meeting yourself halfway is definitely important. I'd say as I've gotten older, social media is something I've definitely dialed in on. And then, if you ever do partake in the occasional cigarette or alcohol, that's definitely something that can be dialed back. I also just for me at least, just when I use my phone to near bed, the sanctity of sleep just gets lost when I'm in a funk. You start thinking about things and going on your phone near bed. That's another big one. And yeah, I guess it's just fun to think about because with every player, you could have players who are ultra prepared who just need to change environment. You could have players who don't have sophisticated systems who just need to start thinking a little harder about what they do. It's different for everyone. And, that's why you don't get too judgmental.
Yeah, and I think there's something very fascinating there in that, for tennis players, when they are in a funk, sometimes the reaction or response is, they just fire their coach. Like they fire their coach, get a new coach, and rework, rebuild their routines from scratch. But that's not really that parameter or that opportunity isn't really there with players when specific, an individual player in football is going through a funk. With tennis players, you hear them say, oh yeah, maybe nothing was wrong. The coach didn't do anything wrong, but this model we've built wasn't working anymore, or maybe it was 6 months jobs, and I just want to try something else. So they bring in someone else with their own principles. They try rebuild it. So that's they can run these mini experiments and have different coaches across 3 years and still be high performing, by the way. So that's just pretty fascinating about how footballers don't have the opportunity. Some do have personal trainers, but in terms of that large scale, be able to change every part of your game 0 to hero with a one coach, that's not some access they have. And I know I bring it up because earlier I remember I said I brought up Federer, and Federer having many injuries and having to switch things up, adapt things. Footballers really don't have that privilege to completely switch up everything because they may have their own nutrition or someone guarding or checking their sleep, but you still have to do that or fall within some confines of what the team expects you to do. And I'm wondering what that space specifically looks like in the long run, specifically with team sports. What other ways coaches they can fine tune or optimize those spaces, since there's still the team dynamic or team element of it?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and that's actually one area where the sport's been trending. Teams that can improve the condition of the player while also signing them for the benefit of the team have a better value prop for players now and sign better. Like us, Real Madrid, our value prop is, hey, even I don't care if we're signing you to be the third backup to Thibaut Courtois. We have a market analysis showing how much our players make after they sign here. They always make more. They always go to better things. If they don't make it here, they're always going on to better things than they would have if they never came here in the first place. And I think that's very important. And, in our case, we signed a lot of multi-positional players and kind of squeeze every drop out of them as well. I think allowing players to be themselves in every capacity, not many teams let them do that. Maybe Real Madrid is a rare environment because we're so relational. It's kind of figure it out. So if you can shine, you will. But for sure, that's a good point. And I think even in basketball, you can work on a jump shot. Like Jason Tatum just got benched after winning Finals MVP in the NBA Finals, benched all Olympics, and because he couldn't hit a jump shot, he was deservedly benched for what it's worth. He just didn't hit anything he was broken, and he fixes it. He's having a great season now, and it's definitely not something you can work on, or you can't. Even if you're better at dribbling, it's different in basketball. You keep working on your handle, and then just when you walk up the floor, someone can see, okay, you're better at dribbling. Football, you need to be challenged again and again by so many players before someone else believes that you've gotten better, and for you to believe you've gotten better. So I agree. It's very difficult. that tennis is, I guess I didn't think about the tennis angle. I guess even things like golf, you could probably just fire one coach, huh?
But yeah, pretty much just experiments. And now I think we've done a few experiments in these ways. And you talk about sleep and nutrition and those things that you think intuitively for sure the players manage. Well, you'd be surprised actually. They are prescribed like, oh, hey, here's what you're meant to do. Here's what you're meant to put into your body by their like the folks at the clubs. But as a whole, do they actually do it? It's discipline to do that, and a lot of times too, these things aren't checked, or it's not a one-on-one experience as you'd have it with maybe golf or tennis, where someone is walking with you, or not just walking with you, but you're seeing every day, 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, work on these shots, get that done. With football, there's a lot more leeway, and definitely, I don't know. I think we might have discussed this before, but some of the best performers we know do have teams behind them, not even one person, a separate team behind them, putting those fine bits or specifications for them just so that all they have to do is just execute and doing the problem solving. A huge part of being able to switch things up and make those experiments as a football player is, do you have someone to parse all that information and do that pocket size, okay, here's what you should run for this week outside what you already have, like training and things. Here's exactly how you should do it. Here's the time you should do it. Here's when you should eat. Here's who should make your food for you. And Ronaldo, I know we've spoken about Ronaldo. Ronaldo has, for most parts throughout his career, had this kind of backboard or some of the backboard behind him. And I remember Ferdinand making this comment about how, oh, when Ronaldo joined, I think Ronaldo was, I don't know how old Ronaldo was then, but he went to Ronaldo's house and Ronaldo was like, oh yeah, don't worry, my chef has already made like my food. This is what we're going to eat because it's already prescribed and someone has already made that food. And he joked that, oh yeah, he never went back after because he wanted to drink. So just something like that.
Yeah. Never went back. Yeah. No, for sure. They all have teams behind them. And the thing to understand is like, but not all of them like have needed to utilize the team fully. Some of them squeeze every drop, some don't. And when you're in that phase where you haven't actually optimized yourself and put a full team and put the full force of discipline and learned and implemented everything they tell you, you have it because it doesn't matter. You could eat fucking pancakes and like the worst quality eggs you find anywhere for breakfast. Your digestive system probably can't tell the difference between that and like the highest quality meal on the planet. Your body can't tell the difference. You go out there, maybe the difference between like scoring 4 and 3 goals was that, so you don't care that night. You still get to go party and have fun. And like people don't realize like it's not a need anymore. It's only a want for those players. Like they don't need to be healthy for 20 years and not have any injuries. They only need to show up enough to like get the next contract, honestly. And if you can't really tell on top of that and you don't feel better, if it's not obvious to you because you've always been healthy, there's no motivation. There's no impetus to actually go do it. I don't know where Mbappe is. We're not commenting on him with that here, but we do know he doesn't have a personal trainer. And we do know Real Madrid's team has a lot of these guys like Vinny. They have full teams behind them and they have had since 2020. Vinny's done this since 2020. He had a personal trainer during the pandemic. Before he was really a surefire starter, he was working on agility, explosiveness, everything. So yeah, it's definitely a thing, but it's not as simple as like every player will learn the same way. That's why Real Madrid, we brought on a new nutritionist. And I was just telling people or tweeting that, you know, she has the right background, but it's one thing when Carvajal hires you and he listens to you. Okay, now you're the head of the whole team. Now, like, you know, Jude doesn't even care you were, okay, not Jude, I won't say Jude, but like, you know, maybe Mbappe doesn't even know who you are. He doesn't care because Jude cares. We know Jude cares, but Jude cares about everything. But like maybe like someone lazy on the team, and we don't have lazy players, but somebody on the team doesn't care. Maybe they couldn't be bothered. And so like changing their diet, that's not like something that happens. That's like not even guaranteed to happen. That's probably like a maybe, if anything. So it is complicated. And I think the future is teams judging players for like how they manage their own mental health, judging their teams, incentivizing all these things in the contracts further. And there will always be like a wrestling between the player and the team. Like there will always be great players who push for better deals, who don't want any of that included because they've never been injured. And then they'll get to a new team. Some of them will show up, some won't. Like it's these guys are ultimately standing up for themselves as labor as well.
I think that's a good seg and a good wrap too, because so many things change, so many experiments might have already been run that we don't even know about. And it's always interesting, but it will be interesting in this case when when Mbappe eventually comes out of this rut, he's definitely going to give some interview somewhere. Maybe
He did. He did.
Oh, he has already given one.
It's weird because he missed up 2 penalties. Interview came out, and then he scored against Girona. He scored this week, and that's where I was like, when you were describing everything, I'm like, I don't know what he's doing. It feels like he knows he's going to break out someday. He has a system, but he's giving interviews during the funk, like, and he's saying, I'm just overthinking it. Like, I'm too snappy. I put too much pressure. I'm going to be fine. And he's chill about it. And I think it's fine. But what are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I must have missed that. Actually, he had already put out in the interview. I was about to say, okay, yeah, 1 month, 2 months, we'll probably see an interview where he explains or clarifies. But that's interesting. I guess then the simpler parts of those simpler problems or simpler ways to fix of just the acceptance, okay, yeah, this was happening. Those parts are already sorted. I always seemed obvious that those would be sorted. But it also means that they are doing things. It raises like, okay, if they know, then it means they are trying to do things about it. They are running some, whatever they are. And I'm just curious exactly what those look like. And I think that's the irony of it, of even if we can see things on the pitch that change and they are running their own experiments, what actually will end up flipping the switch might not even be one single thing that changes, or it might just happen. And that's fascinating.
That's what it's felt like, essentially, in that he missed a penalty, but like they did start moving him away from the left wing, and then he gave the interview anyways, knowing I'm in a funk, I'm gonna get out of it. And then the next game, first half against Girona, horrible, and then second half he scores, and like all the same people asking, is he at Eden Hazard, start tweeting like, is he back? Like they're all tweeting from 1 goal, and he scored a banger before the missed penalties too, or in the game in between the 2 missed penalties, he scored a great goal. So there have been flashes where it's like his body can tell it's coming back to normal, and so for me, yeah, I'm with you in that. I think the interview is a very positive sign. I think it's a sign that they know they're trying things. It won't all happen at once, but it will fix itself. I'm with you.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So then this last injury you'd say was just a little blip. It's just a little calm before the storm, before Kylian Mbappe wins the Champions League with Vinicius.
We'll see about that. But yeah, really, I do think, specifically after the interview, and that's crazy, I just brought it up, but the interview for me, I always look for when that interview happens. And that's also the funny part, because these interviews, is like staggered, is recorded, then it's released some other time after. And you look at, okay, I want to know what day exactly was that recorded. I go and check, okay, this was recorded, okay. And for me, that is, in my opinion, that is one thing. That's another, you asked what are the things you do to break out of a funk. What I do, ironically, that's also one thing I do. I go and essentially do interview style with my mom, and I tell her, okay, this was going to happen from, yes, we've been bad, we've not been doing this great, but after this is a new Joel, or this is, we're switching these up. So it's just that acknowledgement, public acknowledgement to someone who checks you. So in this case, maybe the fans, everyone looking at, public acknowledgement that this is essentially we're switching this up from now. Yes, things have not been going great. And it'll be interesting to see how, and now I'm actually one, I'm going to go listen to that interview, but 2, I'm also going to be paying closer attention to how he comes back after the spell off.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be fun. And yeah, I think we can wrap it up around here. Joel, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing with Baller Bants and stuff? You can feel free to tell them. A lot of analytically inclined viewers here at Managing Madrid.
Yeah, so essentially, Baller Bants up until now has just been a blog, community blog. I pick up interesting ideas and write about them. But recently, I've been thinking about, we have some smart, cool folks in the community who, even if don't watch all the games, at least watch their clubs. And I was trying to see how much predictive value we could get from essentially maybe 100 fans making calls about their club. So if we have 100 fans, maybe 100 Madrid fans, for instance, we put a set of polls or predictive questions that ask for forecasts or predictions about their blog, about their club, and aggregate those and see how does that compare with what the models say about those same questions. How does that compare with what even the bookers say about those same questions? And essentially seeing how we can use that to either integrate into existing models or simulations, but also even just for their own sake. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. What in this case, maybe with Mbappe's situation, one might be, okay, how many goals do you think Mbappe will end up this season? Or what is the likelihood of Mbappe ending up with, I don't know, 30 goals, 35 goals this season? That's exactly how that translates. And I think for me, most importantly, is just to gather more data and see how much of, essentially, I think with these days, I'm trying to optimize for, yes, we're making this analysis, but what exactly is the predictive value of the things we think are important? So this is me actually just trying to hone down into what really is important, what determines what exactly it is that determines if a team is going to do well or not. And I think more data is always better. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I shared the screen there with a few of the articles. A lot of Joel's work does touch into things that are what Real Madrid applies. It feels like the recruitment to. Not many teams do it this way, but athleticism, guys who can run, the importance of them. A lot of the concepts do go around, focus on those things, among other things. It's not just focused on pace and power and physicality and athleticism, but that's definitely one of the cool angles that Baller Bands talks about. Definitely check it out. And I guess we're going to close it out here. It's been fun having you here. We decided to record this in advance, assuming Mbappe would stay in a fun. It might be over now. In fact, we're predicting that it is over, right?
Yep, we are. And we'll see how that goes. And I will stay in the loop. Thank you for having me too. And see you around.